I'm going to attempt to record just the first part of class today, and then possibly compress that file and put it up on YouTube. Can anyone else not hear me? Or raise your hand if you can hear me, please.
I can hear you.
Looks like most people. Check if you can't hear me. Check. Check your. So I typed check your headphone jack, is it properly plugged in? I had a student last week who couldn't hear, and that's what it ended up being, is that she couldn't, her headphone jack wasn't. So everyone else now, so you can hear me? All right. All right, so a couple things. I'm recording the first part of the class today. And what I'm going to try to do is to compress the file and then put it up on YouTube, and then I can email the class the YouTube link, and then that way you can rewatch it if there's anything confusing. So we'll just see how that works. See how much time and everything the time consuming that is. I'm doing it in particular because one student couldn't be in class today, and so that's sort of why I'm doing it. I'm now going to share a PowerPoint with you. Just as you convert. Just takes a minute. There's some photos and things that I have to convert. I did get your real quick to your e-textbooks. If you go to the Blackboard page and scroll down under the weeks, so you guys should see weeks 1, 2, and 3. But then there's under that section there's a section that says FAQs, and then e-textbook access link. So you just click on that link, and then it's going to say Thursday's class, and then just click on Thursday's class, and then that will give you access to the textbook. I did find it on Amazon for $45. How much is this bookstore charging? Does anyone know? My guess is more. 39. Well, maybe it's cheaper. I don't know. So, anyways, that's where you just look for that link then that says e-textbook link, and then I labeled it Thursday's class just because I have a Friday class too. So click on the link that says Thursday class. Yeah, you might have problems with, depending on what browser you have to allow for pop-ups. So you might have to go into, if you let's say Google Chrome, there's like 3 little dots in the upper right hand corner, and then you have to go to site settings and then allow pop-ups. There is a person from the textbook company Cengage, who she's going to have like an office hour um, in the next day or two, and if you want, you can join that. I can send you. So if anyone's interested, I can send you the link, and then she can go in more into detail on how to. We're just going to really be using the chapters to read the chapters. Really nothing. There's no quizzes or anything like that in this class. I did want to talk though about the email assignment. I gave you credit, everyone credit if you submitted the email assignment, but a lot of you it weren't so good with the emails. So this comes from Molly Worthen from the University of North Carolina. So when in doubt, you should speak, write, and act, or always err on the side of formality. So we're in a sort of a world of hyper informality, and we're going to talk a lot about this with paper two. We're going to get really deep into this subject. So while you're in college, your coursework is your job. You should behave as though you are in a professional work environment. That's why I titled it business email. So a lot of you, the emails that you sent last week, you probably won't be hired if it actually were a business environment. Face-to-face communication, always address your instructor as their title. Uh, so Professor Jones, Mr. Jones, Ms. Jones. Someone emailed me earlier this week about if you want to use it, call me by my first name. That's up to you. That's your decision. It doesn't bother me at all. And an email, I always begin the email with "Dear Professor Jones," "Dear, Prof Jones," "Miss Jones." Do not begin the email with "Hi." You should have gotten a grade if you submitted it. You should have gotten it. Do not begin. So a lot of you just began with "Hi." Um, uh, Again, I think it's just that formality that you sort of haven't. You're so used to text messaging and sort of text speak that that sort of bleeds into it. Write and complete sentences using correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation. And then really, really, really important, proofread your email before sending it. I would say read it 3 or 4 times before sending it. Be alert to the tone of your message. Any email to a professor or teaching assistant should sound like a formal letter. It should not sound like a text message or a demand to a customer service representative. So that's and she's got that in bold. So that's sort of a thing that's I've noticed a lot with students. This idea that your teacher is a customer service representative. No, I'm the teacher of the class, and you should respect your teachers. I the way some students contact their instructors. A guy was a student in the mid '90s, and it just it doesn't even process in my mind how you would contact a professor like that. I just don't even understand it. All right, and then the next file. So some examples. You should write, "Dear Professor Jones, I cannot come to your office hours this week. Are you available at any time on Monday instead? Sincerely, Jane Elliott." So notice at the beginning you address your instructor by the name, and then at the end you put your name. Why is that important? Why is it important to use the person's name and to sign off with your name? Why is that important? It makes it seem more personal. So imagine, think of like the chat rooms or like the articles on like Yahoo where you can like leave anonymous comments. If you can leave anonymous comments, it makes it seem like the other person on the other side of the transaction isn't a human being, and that's sort of like dangerous territory. I would say I've been teaching online since 2008. And I would say that it's actually, I think it's the most important thing in terms of online correspondence, is that you make sure to use your name and address the other person by their name, to keep it on that sort of human level, that you're not a bot. This isn't an anonymous sort of transaction. This is a real person. And then, so do not write, "Hi, I need to talk to you about the test. Can I come by Mun?" And then THX Jane. Do not write, "Hello, I'm a senior and I need your class to graduate. My advisor says I need permission. I need you to enroll me immediately." So see that second line, that sort of gets into the habit of talking to your instructor as though he or she was a customer service representative. So just be aware that really, really try to get that down, especially in today's environment of hyper informality. Try to take it back towards being more formal with those you're corresponding with, especially your older instructors. I'm 2 weeks older than Tom Brady. I like to say that our lives, my life and his life, haven't really worked out the same way. But some of your instructors will be even older than I am, and they're used to doing things in a more old-fashioned way. And so it's probably a good idea to just adhere to that old-fashioned way, especially if that old-fashioned person, is your boss. So we're going to start with introductions and conclusions. So writing attention-grabbing introductions and memorable conclusions. So the aim of this paper is to give you experience writing attention-grabbing introductions and memorable conclusions for several college-level essays. Note the rough and revised style of the following introduction. So this is an actual student's paper. She came to me and she asked if I think it was a big paper for her economics class, and she asked if I could help her sort of rewrite some of it to help her get a better grade. So this is her original introduction. Shopping is a major part of the American economy. Shopping could be grocery shopping, shopping for housing necessities, or even shopping for you for fun. Most of the economy relies on others shopping for items, whether it be for necessities or wants. Consumer spending drives nearly 2/3 of the economy. And then parentheses Wong. Some of the economics of shopping are how certain days of the year affect the economy. Also, supply and demand, elastic and inelastic demand, opportunity cost, total utility, marginal utility, and the principle of diminishing marginal utility. So based off of that introduction, how many of you would be interested in reading that paper, the rest of her paper? Probably no one, I'm guessing. So this is how we revised it then. It's a cold, windy, late November evening. You're driving home from Grandma's Thanksgiving dinner when you just happen to pass a Best Buy electronics store. Shockingly, you notice that despite the bone chilling temperatures, there are many camping tents set up right next to the store's front doors. What's going on here? Who are these people, and why are they risking exposure and frostbitten fingers for discounted DVDs? The answer, quite simply, is that these people were born to shop. So, what's sort of the difference between this revised introduction and the first introduction? How is this one more successful? Grabs your attention. It puts an image into your mind, right? Angela says it paints a portrait picture. So, yeah, you want to create an image into the mind of the reader. And then not only that, so that's the first key. So you want to create that image in the mind of the reader. In your conclusion, you want to come back to that same image and come back to that. And that way, the reader will remember that image. So I like to say, think of the relationships that you've been on in your life. Right you remember how they began really, really well, and you remember how they ended really, really well. With the stuff in the middle, you don't remember as well, right? So it's that same sort of thing. For some whatever reason, the human mind is sort of like it's set up to remember the beginning and the end really, really well, and then the middle stuff you don't remember as well. Um, but if you can create an image in the mind's eye, and then come back to that at the end, and that will set up a situation where the reader will remember that. And then the other key is that the image that you create, it stands for like a metaphor for the main idea that you're trying to get across. So that's sort of the key of what you're trying to do. And we'll take an example, a look at that in a few minutes here. In this paper, your task is to read the body of two articles listed below. So it's the Martin article and the Blakely article. These are both up on the week one material tab. Now what I did is I intentionally cut off the introduction of both articles, and I intentionally cut off the conclusion of both articles. And the reason I did that is because the student is too often too tempted to simply rewrite what's already in front of him or her. So what you're going to have to do is come up with an original introduction and an original conclusion. So you're going to write an original introduction to the Martin essay. Then you're going to write a middle paragraph that summarizes the main points of the Martin essay. And then you're going to write an original conclusion to the Martin essay. So read the Martin essay first, and then get a gist of what it's saying. So what is Martin saying? It's gonna be something about teenagers and tattoos. And then same thing with Blakely. You're gonna write an original introduction to the Blakely essay, write a summary paragraph of what Blakely said, and then rewrite an original conclusion to the Blakely essay. So all told, it's going to be at least 6 paragraphs. I want you to put the Martin portion first. Why? It makes it more easy for me to grade that way. So put Martin on top of Blakely. And these are the 2 articles on teenagers and tattoos, and then Mary Kay Blakely, Help or Hindrance, women's magazines offer readers little but fear failure. So women's magazines, so think of, when I say women's magazines, think of the magazines you go when you're in a grocery store and you're like about to check out groceries, and you see maybe a magazine cover with the Kardashians on it or something like that. That's sort of what I mean by women's magazines. Okay, so all paper should be double-spaced Times New Roman with 12-point font, 1-inch margins on all sides. If you're not sure how to change the margins, you can see me. Word should default at 1-inch margins, so it should already be defaulted if you didn't change it. And then 10 points, so 10 points of your overall grade. It's going to be 1 to 2 pages, should be at least 1 full page. And then the primer worksheet is due next week, Thursday. I'll talk about the primer in a minute. The rough draft is due next week, Wednesday. So why is the rough draft due on Wednesday? It's because we're going to do a workshop activity where you guys exchange papers on Thursday. But in order for that to happen, you have to send me your paper on Wednesday, so then I can send out the drafts to you guys before class on Thursday. But I can't do that unless I get the rough drafts, ahead of time. So you need to Dropbox that rough draft by 5:30 on Wednesday. And then the final draft will be due on February 11. So this is an actual email I got. This is from a student from a couple years ago. But he emailed me like the next semester, and he sent me this email, and he said, Damon, I took your written communication class last year, and I intentionally took it my first semester because I've never thought of myself as a writer, and I wanted to improve that aspect of my skill set before I took any other writing-heavy classes. This past week, I turned in a report in an accounting class, and my instructor was apparently so blown away by it that he spent about 10 minutes of his class telling the rest of the students about my report. Based on the content, I mean, it's accounting, I would have to say that my ability to use what you taught me was what made that report worth his praise. So thank you. So a couple of good things he did here. One, he took what he learned in this class and he applied it to other classes. So obviously that's sort of like, what you're supposed to be doing. And then two, he thanked his instructor, which is always a good thing to do because sometimes it can seem like a thankless job. So when we hear back from former students that we actually taught you something, then it means the world, really, to hear that. Now, what he was getting at in terms of why the instructor was so blown away, I think it was more this paper than anything else, in that he created that image in the reader's mind, and then he came back to it. And it's just that rhetorical device that if you learn to do it and you practice it and you keep practicing at it, eventually you get really good at it, and then you can implement it for all of your papers, and then you'll notice that your grades will go up for not only in this class but for all your other classes as well, because your instructors will be so surprised that you know how to do this. I took a poetry class once in graduate school where I hadn't had any experience with poetry, and I wasn't good at first, but it was a summer class, and by the end of the summer, after practicing and writing all these different poems, I had gotten pretty good, where I was much, much better than I was at the beginning. And so we're going to do a practice activity after we take a break, where we practice writing introductions and conclusions. Uh, and you might not be good at first, but then by the end of the practice activity, I think you'll be a little bit better, and you'll be ready to take on this first paper. So here's a student example. It's the same assignment. Notice it's from February 16th, 2009. So yeah, I've been doing this assignment for a long time. So this is the student too, Arnold. This guy, I think he was like 62 or 63 years old. He was retired, and he was just taking classes for something to do in retirement, which I applaud. I think that's something that I would do too. I think I would take classes. I would never be the person who retired and watched TV all day. That would never be my life. I would have to be doing something. But this is his assignment. Again, he was like 62, 63 years old. So if he can do it, I think that you can probably do it as well. So he said, there are a few distinct memories which I can recall from my early 20s, but one particular event I can still remember in vivid clarity, of being in a state of drunken slumber, half slouched over in a reclining chair in some Korean tattoo parlor. Fortunately, I was able to sober up just in time before my right arm would permanently become a Lowenbrow beer advertising billboard. My friend Mike did not fare so well, as he was one person ahead of me in line, and now the proud recipient of a new tattoo. It was of a little flying devil throwing a frisbee. How he arrived at this design no one knows for sure, but it was now done dead and a permanent part of his earthly body. This youthful impulse would be a lasting memento of his time of innocence, doing things on a whim without a care or thought about tomorrow, his own way of rebelling against the powers to be, namely the U.S. Army, which now controlled his every action. So now that's his introduction. Now watch how he comes back to those same images in the conclusion. Not too long ago, I ran into my old friend Mike. I happened to notice that there was a horrid, dark, blotchy area of skin where his old tattoo used to be. I asked him what had become of his tattoo, which he was so proud of 20 years ago. My wife couldn't stand it, so she made me get rid of it, he said. Goodbye to his unique mark, goodbye to his individual identity. What was once an image of his youth and rebellious ways is now officially dead and put to rest. It is said that age begets wisdom. Perhaps the little red devil throwing a frisbee had to perish for Mike to make the transition into maturity. When his tattoo was blotted out, I believe that a part of Mike also died, for that tattoo had weathered and experienced 20 years of his life. So, what are some good things that Arnold did that made it so effective? What are some things that Arnold did that made it well done? Yeah, so he said he not only tied the idea together, but he continued the story into a conclusion. So again, yeah, he linked the introduction with the conclusion. He did exactly what I basically explained, that you should do. That's so effective. He put a face on it, so that's the term I'm going to use. So he used a specific name, right? He used Mike. For whatever reason, we're drawn to names, and so if you just use a person's name, somehow it's just so much more personal. Is anyone familiar with the film director Wes Anderson? Angela, what movies? Any particular movie that stands out of Wes Anderson's? He's a director. He did Rushmore. He did The Royal Tenenbaums. He did Fantastic Mr. Fox. He did. He's known for sort of quirky movies, kind of. One of the interesting things about Wes Anderson is he writes his own screenplays. And I read once before that when he's coming up with a new character, the first thing he does when he comes up with a new character is he thinks of what is that character's hairstyle. So for whatever reason, for him, once he imagines the character's hairstyle, then that formulates that into like what kind of person that's going to be. So it's just sort of that little thing, that idea. Um, what does Mike's hairstyle look like, right? Well, one, it's just talking about the Korean War, so it's probably, and he's just about to get enlist, so he's probably got kind of like a crew cut, right? Something like that. Let me go back to the PowerPoint again. So again, you're gonna rewrite. You're gonna write an original introduction to the Martin essay. You're gonna write a summary to the Martin essay. You're gonna write an original conclusion to the Martin essay, and then in the same document, write an original. It should say introduction to Blakely. Write an original introduction to Blakely, original summary of Blakely, original conclusion of the Blakely essay. All told, it's going to be about 6 paragraphs total. So it's 2:10. It's 2 o'clock. Let's take our break, and we'll come back at 2:10. So let's take a break and come back at 2:10. I'm going to stop the recording here.